Join us May 15th through the 17th at the Mises Institute for our Revisionist History of War Conference. It's our first history conference in almost 30 years. I will be speaking on why the Confederacy lost its war from a Misesian revisionist perspective. Non-member registration fee is $325. There's more information below at the link, and register today. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Minor Issues Podcast. I'm Mark Thornton at the Mises Institute. Well, rising from around $400 billion a decade ago, the interest on the national debt last year was over $1 trillion. The central government's debt is currently over $33 trillion, and the net present value of its future financial obligations is over $100 trillion. Many Americans are patiently putting aside additional savings in order to pay the higher taxes that will be required in the future by this burgeoning debt. Some Americans believe that the national debt does not really exist, or that they will not be required to pay for it. They plan to leave the country soon, or that they will be long dead before such debt comes due in some future crunch time. Now, I would like for you to imagine what percentage of Americans are actually saving today to pay off the government's interest in future debt obligations. I would also ask you to imagine a future generation of Congress that's willing to balance the budget, cut back significantly on entitlement programs and future debt obligations, and to start paying down the national debt. Depending on your own assumptions of these various possibilities, you have your own working estimate of how likely it is that the United States is headed for hyperinflation, where prices in general increase by thousands of percent per year. According to Mises, quote, "The most important thing to remember is that inflation is not an act of God, that inflation is not a catastrophe of the elements or a disease that comes like the plague. Inflation is a policy." Now, it might seem preposterous that the United States could have a hyperinflation. We have a strong dollar that's stronger than most every other fiat currency. It's the world reserve currency and the leading trade currency by a wide margin. We are the world's leading economic superpower and the world's leading military power. So people might ask, how could we have a hyperinflation? Yes, I know many second and especially third tier nations have experienced hyperinflation just recently, but the history of important hyperinflations is actually populated with leading economies of their times. The first was in France, which was the world's largest economy at the time of the French Revolution. It succumbed. Germany was certainly an industrial powerhouse on the eve of World War I and one of the world's largest economies. It succumbed shortly thereafter. Let us not forget the Roman Empire's demise went hand in hand with runaway inflation, or that America experienced a hyperinflation during the Revolutionary War that took many, many years to recover from. The British Empire's demise was also certainly tied to the debasement of its once famous currency. Ludwig von Mises lived at the time of the German and Austrian hyperinflations. When questioned by Austrian authorities at the time on how to stop it, Mises reputedly helped slay the inflation beast in Austria by telling them to stop the printing presses. Mises was a lifelong advocate of the gold standard. He had carefully and meticulously showed that in his first major book, The Theory of Money and Credit, that inflation was the result of issuing too many banknotes beyond the amount of gold held in reserve. His analysis of inflation shows how this process degenerates into hyperinflation, a process that stymies public officials, the general public, and even most economists. Mises described 3 phases of inflation. Phase 1, there is an increase in the supply of money, usually involving an increase in the quantity of paper banknotes in excess of the supply of gold held in reserve. Usually unaware, the general public willingly absorbs the greater quantity and does not adjust its demand to hold money. It's even possible that prices decline. Phase 2, while encouraged by the apparent success, monetary authorities and bankers issue still more paper money. However, eventually the general public becomes satiated and reduces their demand to hold money, increases their spending, and this leads to higher prices in the economy. In phase 3, as prices have already been rising and as more money is being injected into the economy, the general public starts to expect higher prices, so they reduce their demand to hold money further and spend more. They begin to exhaust their money balances. As the demand to hold money dries up, people spend all of their cash balances and any new income on non-perishable goods as quickly as possible. At this point, prices skyrocket towards infinity. Money dies, and the people search for alternative means of payment. Of course, key ingredients in historical hyperinflations are excessive government spending and excessive government debt that has to be paid and refinanced. Now, a regular inflation, just like a regular inflation, hyperinflation is not just a matter of changing numbers and adding zeros. It is impoverishing, like full-blown socialism. It destroys the capital stock of an economy, like in total war. And it changes human personality away from socially desirable traits towards antisocial traits, like what you would see incubated in prisons. Germans who lived during the hyperinflation were the likes of those who were willing to follow Hitler and support Nazism after their famous hyperinflation of the early 1920s.